So yesterday, I was super excited to record the video because we were only 4 cards away from completing our Prismatic Evolutions Master Set. The entire Fan Clan Master Set that we're giving away to one lucky subscriber. We were only 4 cards away, and I was like, yeah, this is awesome. I'm going to be able to go to the mailbox. I was skipping, literally skipping, doing the fanny skip. I don't know if you've ever seen the fanny skip, but it's famous. I was skipping to the mailbox, open it up, and there was nothing. And I was like, well, that stinks. So we're still 4 cards away, unfortunately. The good thing is I did put the cards we got in yesterday, or 2 days ago, or 3 days ago, whenever. I put them all in the binder. So the binder, look at how good this page looks. Like, this is this is top shelf right here. Everything is filled. So really just the only SIR that we still need is Janine. We bought it. It's on its way. It's just not here yet. And then we've got 3 Master Balls. The Suicune, and 2 other ones. The Dusknoir, I can't even remember the other one. 3 of them. We need 3 of them. They're ordered. They should be here any day. And then we can give this bad boy away. So if you want to win this master set, you can. All you gotta do is make sure you're subscribed. And then I will just leave the link in the description down below. There's a video you want to go back to, you want to leave a like and a comment on. Boom, just leave a like. Seriously, just a like and a comment on that video. I will link it in the description. So subscribe, and that's it. That's all you have to do. And then you're entered to win an entire master set. Everything that you can pull from Prismatic Evolutions. Tough set, obviously, to find right now for any decent pricing. We spent a lot of money on it. Somebody deserves a huge win right now. A lot of people do. But luckily we can, unfortunately we can only give one giant win to one person. But then we'll do another master set giveaway with Journey Together, and then we'll keep going, and that'll be that. The market right now is weird, very, very weird. And we're going to talk about illustration rares. We're going to start out with Drowzee, because Drowzee is the one that's making the most noise. There's a lot of misconceptions that are going on. There's a lot of just assumptions that are going on. That's fine. Like, I think it's good to make assumptions. I think it's good to kind of try and dissect what is going on in the Pokemon card market. I think it's great to do that, because then you don't base your decisions off of FOMO. You're not like, oh, I got to get this. There is a lot of FOMO going on right now. We got to pump the brakes a little bit, because you don't want to overspend and then end up regretting it. So I want to start just by talking about manipulation. Not everything is being manipulated. Not everything is manipulated. Not every time when you see a card spike does that point to manipulation. Now, I do believe there is manipulation involved. There is definitely manipulation involved with the Drowzee, with other cards as well. And there's buyouts that happen. There are buyouts. I don't know how many times I've told this to people who still, they just don't believe me. There are literally Discord groups out there who they will pick a new card or a rarity of cards every single week, and they'll be like, all right, boys, go get them. All of them. All of them. There's like one YouTuber that I know of, a smaller YouTuber who has a Discord who literally like just targets certain cards on a weekly basis, and he's like, all right, everybody, go buy these out. Buy all these out. And people do it. They do it to take advantage. And the reason behind that is because when there is opportunity for money to be made, some people take advantage of that opportunity. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say they don't appreciate Pokemon, but I mean, at some point in time, it's like, how can you not say that? You know what I mean? Like, it's very, very difficult. The intentions are obviously not what I necessarily respect. I'm not going to get into the morality purpose of it all, or the morality points of it all. You can obviously think what you want, but it does happen. And that's something that it's very important for you to look at data and look at what's going on in the market before you make any buying decisions. Otherwise, you're going to get frustrated. I know not everything's about money, and it shouldn't be. Like, obviously, there's a lot going on in the market. There's a lot of really cool cards in the market. Obviously, there's a lot of cool cards that are going to be coming to the market in the near future, with Journey Together, with the black and white throwback, with the Team Rocket set, like all these really cool cards coming out. But you want to make sure, and it's not, like I said, not all about the money, but you want to make sure that your collection is as close to worth what you put into it as it possibly can be. Like, it's great, like, to appreciate this ducklet right here. This is a cool ducklet, right? Like, this ducklet's cool looking. It looks neat from Twilight Masquerade. It's got some cool artwork, but this ducklet is only worth a penny, right? Like, this ducklet is only worth a penny. I spent, I don't know how much on it, but more than a penny, right? It's just nice when you know that the card is worth the value that you spent on it. And it has the potential. Now, it doesn't need to go up over time, but it has the potential to do so. And when you are constantly buying cards at their high point or their peak, when you're constantly buying cards when they're way up there, like, it can get very frustrating, especially if you do use apps like the Collector app or the Rare Candy app or something like that, and you wake up one day and you're like, wow, my collection lost 30% value over the past week. Like, it gets frustrating for people. So be careful. Like, you really, really got to be careful. So there is manipulation that happens and buyouts that happen. A lot of times they're targeted for a specific reason. That Drowzee is a prime example, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But there's a lot of craziness going on with illustration rares right now, and you can let me know in the comment section down below what you think. We're in a very weird spot right now with Pokemon, and I'm going to keep preaching to be patient. I'm going to keep doing it. And I know that might be a little bit off base for me or out of touch, because it's easy for me to say, right? Like, I can't order that much from distribution because they barely have anything in stock, but I can still order a little bit. I can still get cards. I don't have to go to the store. But it's easy for me to say. The only way this is going to get fixed is if we stop buying at these ridiculous price points. And if you miss out on certain things, that's okay, because there's going to be other things down the road that you're not going to miss out on that look even cooler, or there's other cards that haven't been targeted that look even cooler that you haven't found yet. That's why it's great to watch a variety of content, and it's great to just get involved in a variety of different conversations, but you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And I think that's really important. Just because all these content creators are talking about Drowzee, that does not mean you need to go buy the Scarlet and Violet Base Drowzee. Just because it's $90 and everybody's talking about it, or you see this one's $90, what if this one goes up to $60 or this one goes up to $70? I better buy all these now before they go up to just ignore them. Like, it's okay to miss out on those. You're not going to miss out. Yeah, some of them are cool, but you know what? They will retrace over time, and even if they don't, you will be so much happier spending your money on things that are a better value, a better deal, that you can love in your collection, because there are going to be a ton of other pieces, and we have got to learn to be okay with that. If we continue to buy at these exuberant prices, and I understand, yeah, there's situations where distros are charging more money because they have to buy stuff on the secondary market. I get that. And I understand that. I completely understand that. But if we keep buying from Facebook Marketplace, and if we keep buying from eBay or TCG Player, when these prices are clearly being bought, like, we're at the state right now where everybody just assumes you can walk into a Target, clear off the shelves, and sell everything for triple MSRP. And we need to stop buying at that price point, because that's not the case. It shouldn't be. They're just taking advantage of what's going on in the market, because they ended up having a schedule that allowed them to be at the Target at that time, at the time of the restock, and you got stuck home with the kids, or you got stuck at work. And this is a rant, and it's not supposed to be, so I'm not even going to do that anymore. Let's talk about illustration rares. I don't know where that came from. That was weird. But seriously, just speak with your wallet. That's really important. I think don't FOMO, don't lose your mind. Like, let's just enjoy this together. This is a fun hobby. There's the EUICs going on right now. My boys are doing really well over in EUIC. Shout out to Azul, shout out to Grant, shout out to Caleb. They're doing really well so far. I hope they keep it going. It's only like round 6 as I'm recording this, so hopefully they keep it up. But honestly, like, there's a lot of great in the game. Pokemon Pocket's still fun. Pokemon Go is still fun. Pokemon Unite is fun. If you've never done Pokemon Unite, we got Pokemon Day next week. Got a couple of streams, giveaways next week. Wednesday we're doing a stream here on the channel where we're giving away packs to members. Thursday, we have a free stream on Drip where we're giving away, I don't even know what we're giving away. We're giving away a bunch of Sword and Shield era packs. Like, there's a lot of good right now. But illustration rares, 1 out of 12 is the pull rate. I put 1 out of 12 up there. I think it's really important. People forget about this. Illustration is not that hard to pull. 3 out of 36 packs. You buy a booster box of a Scarlet and Violet era set. 3 of those packs are going to contain illustration rares. That's pretty much how it goes. Pretty much throughout the entirety of the Scarlet and Violet generation. They have not changed pull rates at all. Variance plays a huge factor on illustration rares. This is what I think a lot of people forget. So let's assume for a second that the same amount of booster packs have been printed for every single set release in Scarlet and Violet. So Scarlet and Violet Base, there's 1 million packs out there. And every single set, all the way up to Surging Sparks, there's 1 million packs that have been printed. There's way more than that, but let's just say 1 million. Technically, a specific illustration rare from Paldea Evolved would be more rare than a specific illustration rare from Stellar Crown. Why? Because the variance is so much different. Pull rates are the same, 1 out of 12 packs, but you have 36 options in Paldea Evolved versus Stellar Crown, where you only have 13. That is a huge difference. Huge difference. If you pull perfectly, it will take you 156 packs to complete Stellar Crown illustration rares. If you pull perfectly, it would take you 432 packs to complete Paldea Evolved's illustration illustration rares. Like, that's a huge difference. You do that $5 a pack, that's the difference between $800 and $2,000 roughly. Like, that's a huge difference right there. So not every illustration rare is printed the same, and I think that's worth noting. Now, obviously, there's various print runs. These are not printed the same. Like, there's not the same amount of booster packs that have been printed for Scarlet and Violet Base as Surging Sparks. There's probably far less Surging Sparks that were printed than Scarlet and Violet Base, also because of age and because of other factors as well. But Scarlet and Violet Base, you have 24 illustration rares that you could pull. Paldea Evolved, you have 36. Obsidian Flame's very small. So you look at cards like Cleffa, you look at cards like Ninetales. Yeah, those are very pricey, like, and continuing to climb. And the artwork is beautiful. Those, obviously, rarity is not necessarily an only indicator of price and value. But Obsidian Flame's much easier to pull those cards than to pull something like the Latios from Surging Sparks. It's much more difficult to pull that Latios because you have 23 options to choose from. It is half as easy or twice as difficult to pull that Latios as it is to pull that Cleffa because the variance is just a huge factor. So that's very important to note. Scarlet and Violet Base, not a bad set by any means. A beautiful set, lots of really cool artworks. 24, it's about a mid-size set, so not as big as Paradox Rift, not as big as Paldea Evolved, but average. So about the same as like Surging Sparks, Twilight Masquerade, Temporal Forces, Scarlet and Violet Base, those all. So if we look at the Drowzee right here, and this is one of the reasons, this is why it's not just manipulation that's going on, because this information gets spread out there. My face is always in the way, so let me move that out of the way. But this is why there's targeted stuff that's going on. So if you look right at the bottom down there, that's our PSA population report. So this is probably a little bit outdated. I think there's more in existence right now. But the amount of Drowzee illustration rares that have been graded by PSA, you have 724 of them that graded a 9 and 271 of them that have graded a 10. And this information gets out, a content creator spreads it, and because of that, more information gets spread, it's a difficult card to grade. It's a difficult card to get a 10 on. It's much easier to get a 9. It's about 3 times as easy to get a 9 as it is to get a 10. So because of that, all of a sudden you see that PSA 10 price start to climb and climb and climb. And now if you look on eBay, most recent solds are $750, $850 for a PSA 10 Drowzee because it is more difficult to get a 10 than it is to get a 9. So buying out all of the near mint copies on TCG Player that were $20, $30, $40, $50, setting them off in bulk to PSA to get graded with the idea that, hey, if I buy 100 of them and 10 of them come back as a PSA 10, like, that is going to be what, $10,000 right there. I mean, I'm only spending $5,000 on buying them all out. So that's why there's part of these targeted things that happen, because a lot of times they look at it and they're like, well, look at what happened to Magikarp. Magikarp is super expensive raw. It's super expensive in a PSA 10 because it's tough to get in a PSA 10. And then they start looking down the line at these other illustration rares, and illustration rares are an easy target because there's not a whole lot of inventory out there for each one. There's not a whole lot of them on the secondary market, and for the longest time they were dirt cheap. You're talking about every single set release. Most illustration rares, unless it's a super popular Pokemon, fall to like $2, $3, $4 a piece. So those can get bought out and manipulated super easily. But when people are looking at manipulation, this is what they're looking at, which is very frustrating, because obviously you want this information out there, but then there's people who take advantage of it, and that's why you always have to be careful with what you put out. It is just a vicious cycle. But again, when the opportunity presents itself for people to make money, sometimes they take advantage of that opportunity, and this is a situation where people are taking advantage of the opportunity. So yeah, it's manipulated, it's a buyout, but it's targeted for specific reasons. And then when this information spreads, some normal collectors who are just like, well, I'll buy $100 Drowzee with the chance to get it in PSA 10, because then it's all of a sudden it's like, well, there's manipulation going on, but it's also natural because people are willing to take that chance. They're willing to spend $100 on a Drowzee because if they grade it and it gets a PSA 10 and they're sending in a sub anyways, well, then all of a sudden that Drowzee that they spent $100 on is $1,000, and it all of a sudden, like, it's a perfect cycle of just viciousness that just continues and continues and continues. But you can see not a huge amount of population out there right now, but 724 9s compared to 271 10s is a pretty big difference. That's a pretty big discrepancy. So that's one of the reasons that you're seeing this happen with the Drowzee. But if we look at the Drowzee right now, you can see up 452% over the past year, with the majority of that damage damage happening really over the past month. It did jump up. It was at $13.89 in middle of December. So this is 3 months of data. 3 months and it's jumped up 452%, which is crazy. It was a $13 card, $14 card in middle of December, jumped up beginning of January, just passed over $30, and people are like, whoa, this is jumping up like crazy. And then look what happened over the past couple of weeks. So yeah, it got bought out a lot. You can see not necessarily too many or abnormalities with the amount of sales happening on a weekly basis, but definitely more than what we've seen, just an increase in demand because of a multitude of different reasons. I don't know if this card was targeted specifically by a Discord. I know that the cards are, so it could have been, but once all that information gets put out there, it spreads like wildfire, that this card could blow up because it's worth $800 in a PSA 10, or it's so hard to grade in a PSA 10, and all of a sudden people take that information and run with it, and look what happens. 452% growth. So now it's sitting at 78.09 and continuing to climb. Here's the Houndour right now from Obsidian Flames. This one also has made a lot of noise recently. Again, another card that's fairly easy to pull, because if you open up a case of Obsidian Flames, you almost got the entire set mastered, because it is such a small set, and that is really important, worth noting, heading into Journey Together. So Journey Together is going to be a much more difficult set as far as pull rates go, but still a small set, very close to the size of a set like Obsidian Flames, which only took a case or a case and a couple booster boxes to master, because of how often you pulled a special illustration rare or a hyper rare. Now, pull rates did change a lot with Temporal Forces, so it's going to be probably twice as hard, but you might be able to master Journey Together with 4, 5, 6 cases, somewhere around there, which is a lot better than what it's been for a lot of other sets. In November, this card was $2.81, and it stayed relatively flat. It did jump up to about $7 at the beginning of February, and now it's exploded up over 862% over the past 3 months. That is just a gaudy number to even say. Sitting at 27.04 currently and continuing to climb. Here's the Ghastly. This one went up and down a little bit. This one did get targeted. It got bought out right at the beginning. It's gone through a lot of ebbs and flows. You can see some manipulation trying to happen in the middle of November. Now might be the time for it to shine, but manipulation not necessarily happening with this one. It's more consistent sales and just people willing to pay a little bit higher of a price point, and it's just continuing to climb because of that. So more organic on this one. You can see not so many abnormalities as far as sales volume goes on TCG Player. It did jump up to about $52.24 at the beginning of February. It's backed off a little bit, sitting at $49.88, but still up about 97%, so almost 100% growth over the past 3 months. Here's the Groudon. This one threw a little bit of a stretch here and there with some abnormalities, including the beginning of January, including right around Black Friday, but everything went up at Black Friday because of the deals that TCG Player was offering at the time. Really around January 11th is when it started spiking in growth, and it did end up passing $100, so it was sitting at $59.28, which isn't bad. Like, it's still expensive for an illustration rare, but nowhere near the potential that obviously the Groudon ended up having. It jumped up to about $108.39 recently. Now it has retraced a little bit. It's lost about 9% from there over the past couple weeks, but still up about 69% over the past 3 months. So it's sitting at $100.25. The Metagross, some abnormalities going on with this one over the last few weeks. Obviously, more sales happening between 40 and 50 on a weekly basis over the past few weeks. In November, it was sitting at $12.06, so not one of the cheapest illustration rares by any means, and more natural growth all the way up until beginning of February, and that's when you start seeing this steeper pattern right there, where things really shot up. So now it's up about 184%, sitting at $34.73 and continuing to climb. Here's the Baxcalibur. The interesting thing about this one is Baxcalibur was a little bit more pricey because it was so competitive when Chime Pow was a big deal, but now that Chime Pow kind of fell out of favor, Baxcalibur was falling quite a bit. This was like a $15, $16 illustration rare for a while, and now it's fallen down. It was single digits, below $10 in November, then leveled off a little bit in January, and then February it really started moving up again. Now it's up 199%, almost 200% growth, sitting at $26.71 and continuing to climb. Here's the Bronzor. This one from Temporal Forces. This one, $1.78. This was a $2 illustration rare for a while. You can see in November, sitting there at $1.78, and even all the way up until the beginning of February, it was basically $3. And now all of a sudden, over the past couple weeks, it's been bought like crazy, and it's jumped up 500%. You also don't have as many people selling their stuff on the secondary market, and because of that, inventory is getting bought up and not getting replaced as quickly. So now these new price points are being established because the inventory isn't being sold as quickly because there's so much demand for Pokemon cards right now. now a lot of people holding onto their cards because they want to, because they're popular. And because of that, this one's up to $10.77. Not a really expensive Pokemon card by any means, but you see 500% growth, and it's like, holy buckets, that's crazy. Here's the Fuecoco from Paldea Evolved. In November, this was sitting at $13.37. It's a little bit pricier, but you can see right around Black Friday, some abnormality of sales there because of Black Friday, and then relatively consistent, and it's just being consistent even at a new price point. So not necessarily a lot of manipulation going on with this one. It's just more natural, and it's just more demand without the ability to refill the stock as it sells. Up about 126%, sitting at $30.17 right now, which is just off of its high point of $31.65. Here's the Phoebus from Surging Sparks. This one combining with the Melodic is really cool. Those connecting cards, I'm always going to love the connecting cards. I don't know how you guys feel about those, but they're absolutely, they're slapping. They're super killer. November of 2022, or November 22nd, this was sitting at $5.72, relatively flat up until February. It did jump up to about $8, but now it's increased quite a bit. It's sitting at $16.15. That's a 1 year or a 3-month high for this card, up about 172%. Here's the Litten from Temporal Force. This one also making a lot of noise, and again, not so many abnormalities in sales. It's just more natural progression on this one. We're not seeing like what we saw with the Drowzee, where you have these couple weeks where all of a sudden there's just this giant sales amount. November 22nd was sitting at $7.04, and this one very, very strong growth pretty much throughout the entire 3-month stretch. It did jump up to $19.24 before retracing a little bit back down to closer to like that $15 mark, but now it's gone back up, so it's sitting at $18.50 right now, about 163% growth. Here's one that's really weird. Like, obviously, this is what I'm talking about when I'm like, hey, pay attention to what's going on in the market, pay attention, don't FOMO. Like, this is a clear manipulation point right here where somebody was just like, hey, let's buy out all the cloths. Which it's like, Cloth is cool as a Pokemon, but like this card isn't as slapping as a bunch of other cards. Like, it's fine, but is it worth $9.35? I don't know. Like, you can be the deciding factor of that, but it was $1.64 for the longest time. November 22nd, $1.64 all the way up until even beginning of February. It was a $3 card, and it sells 20 a week, and then all of a sudden 1 week 120 sold. So don't tell me that's not a buyout. Like, that's clearly a buyout. Jumping up 434%, so sitting at $9.35 currently and continuing to climb. Here's the Pachirisu, also from Scarlet and Violet Base. Also another situation where there's clearly some weird stuff going on. Beginning of February, this one must have gotten targeted a little bit earlier, and because of that, the new price point that's being set is holding, sitting at $12.03. It was $3.88 back in November. Now it's up about 162%, but beginning of February, you had that 1 week where all of a sudden it sold about 4 times as much as what it normally sells on a weekly basis. Here's the Toad Scroll from Paradox Rift, another one where it's like, okay, well, end of January, all of a sudden there were 70 of them that sold on a weekly basis. Usually there's between 10 and 20, so something weird happened with this Toad Scroll, and because of that, it's jumped up 165%. In November, it was $3.28. Now it's $9.43. It is a cool looking card. Like, I do like the artwork, the lighting, like the color scheme really pops, which is cool. The Milcery, definitely more organic growth on this one. Look at the amount of sales that happen on a weekly basis. A very strong illustration rare from Stellar Crown that's been selling consistently between 40, 50, 60 copies on a weekly basis ever since November. In November, it was a $2 card, and it's been moving and selling at new price points. So it's jumped all the way up to about $11.06, up about 453%, which is giant growth, but still sticking at these higher, even with the higher price points, and still selling a consistent amount, which is very interesting. So definitely you can see the difference in the patterns here when you look at the sales volume. For a long time, TCG Player didn't have the sales volume graph on there. I'm really glad that they added it, because you can see stuff like this Cloth right here, or this Pachirisu, or this Toad Scroll, and then you can compare that to things like this Milcery, where it's like, okay, well, Milcery makes a little bit more sense. Obviously, once you start putting things together and you see stuff like this Drowzee at the beginning here, which obviously has a few weeks where all of a sudden there's a lot more that are being sold. Well, why? Well, then you tell your story, and it's like, okay, well, now everything kind of makes sense why this one was targeted. So I hope you enjoy the content. If you did, please hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a like, leave a comment. It goes a really long way for the algorithm. Share the video, share the channel. You share, like, yeah, or don't. Like, just thanks for being here. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. We'll be back on Sunday with another video, and hopefully the master set will be completed by then. I'm going to fanny skip to the mailbox, and hopefully there's cards in there. I'll talk to you guys soon. Until next time, peace!